first speaker here is going to delight. This is Nikki Lawley. She's an advocate and educator here in New York, and she's going to talk about some work that she's doing to educate the not only patients but also the medical community. So let's welcome Nikki with a warm round of applause.
Nikki! Nikki!
Thanks, Beth. Love being part of NECAN. NECAN is a great organization trying to bring the Northeast together and collaborate with all kinds of different events all over the Northeast. So this is my second time speaking at a NECAN event. We're here today to talk in a different light. We're here, there's lots of problems in New York State. We all know that. I'm not here to talk about the problems. I'm here to talk about potential solutions and how can we work together to be part of a greater change. Today, as I was driving in with my friends Frank and Noel, Frank actually pointed out a billboard, and it was for Canna Provisions. Canna Provisions, friends, is a dispensary in Massachusetts. In New York State, due to the advertising regs, we cannot advertise dispensaries in New York State, but somehow Boston, Massachusetts can. That's pretty fundamental and kind of crazy when you think about that. Like, we're advertising, all that tax revenue is leaving our state. And yet that's allowed, but you can't, as a business in New York, advertise the same way. So I'm not here, like I said, to talk about the problems, but I'm here to more, how can we work together? How can we get industry leaders and those making decisions at the table actually make changes and do something as a community rather than looking at everybody as the enemy and being on your own little island? What if we actually worked together and had input at the OCM, input at the Medical Cannabis Industry Association? There would be no adult use market if it wasn't for patients and the legacy growers who got them there. I did not choose to be a patient. I did not choose to be a consumer. My life changed in 2016 when I was working as a pediatric nurse. In nursing, we don't learn about the endocannabinoid system. We don't learn anything about holistic therapies. We learn that medicine is king. And I mean, pharmaceuticals are what is our treatment plan. That's what doctors are taught. And I'm not saying there aren't other holistic therapists out there. There are, but people don't know what they don't know. And when I was ready to take my life in 2017, a billboard came by advertising get your medical marijuana card in Nevada today. So that billboard this morning was kind of a weird full circle moment. It wasn't moving down a strip or anything, it was a standalone, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And when that billboard came by, immediately I dismissed it. I dismissed it like I've always thought of pot smokers as losers, lazy, that whole stereotype. I was the DARE graduate with honors with Nancy Reagan. So, your brain on drugs, fry an egg. That's what I saw when I saw that billboard. I'm like, oh good, you've already got a brain injury. Wonderful, let's go fry our brain on drugs some more. So, seeing that, and my husband, being the great Boy Scout he is, said, well, let's go try it. You've smoked pot before and you've laughed. I was in such a dark place and ready to take my life. And that billboard literally changed the trajectory of my life forever. And I have become an incredibly loud-mouthed advocate for the plant, trying to educate and remove that stigma. People shouldn't have to get to the point that I was before finding cannabis as medicine. And if people are in the closet and not sharing their stories, that's a problem, because that's how people relate. That's how people change their whole perspective, is by relating to someone else's story. So today, what I'm trying to present in a different way than what I've ever done before. So never use slides, so everyone please be patient. But I'm trying to teach people how to be their own advocate, but get those industry leaders, those in charge, to take notice. Because medical patients are actually worth something. We use cannabis as medicine every day. We have a budget already allocated for our medical cannabis. So focusing on high THC and focusing on things that really don't matter are really kind of silly, because at the end of the day, what patients need is what the community needs. And so how can we do a better job and get industry to work with us rather than against us? So the agenda is basically, I kind of already bypassed my story, so you've heard that. And I'm just gonna try and teach people about how to be an advocate. And the patient experience matters. So just trying to start productive dialogue. I mean, everyone in this room knows what cannabis is. I don't have to teach you about that, but what I want to talk about is some of the places we're failing and what's happening. So, as I mentioned, this is me. I was a very productive nurse, very lively, everything was great, hunky-dory, and in a second my life changed. I mean, didn't plan it, and I'm still considered disabled today, but I'd like to use the term differently able rather than disabled, because this whole event or life change has made me a better person. It's made me a better nurse. It's made me a better human. And those are things that aren't real tangible, that people don't understand until you literally are at the end of your rope and ready to go, and then you're given a second chance. Those stories are powerful, my friends. And those stories need to be told at the legislative level. They need to be told at the registered organization level, at the card level, at the growers and the processors level. Patients want consistency. So how can we as a community change the laws, change the dialogue, and do things in a way that benefits the entire community? When the when the advisory board spoke the other day, for those of you that had an hour to kill and nothing better to do and listen to this advisory council, it was shocking when I heard them say, we get no support from the OCM or the Cannabis Control Board. Like, how can you have an advisory board that's literally just off doing their own thing without input from those people who their lives matter based on their decisions, that they have no idea what the market's doing? And one of my goals is to ultimately find a way to liaise with the OCM, find a way to be part of where those decisions are being made and talked about. Working for an RO. So, I mean, I'm in a quandary, right? I'm a medical patient who, I was never a fan of the registered organizations until I started learning all the hoops and the bullshit that for the last 10 years they have had to endure in a way that is unlike any other registered organization or licensed producer in other states or countries. So they're losing money hand over fist. They're, everyone's like, oh, they're big business, they're making all this money. No, my friends, they're not. They're not making the money because New York State legislative efforts have dictated how they do things. Very similar to the billboard story. We can't advertise in New York, so instead let's send our tax revenue to a different state. This is the kind of thing that we're not talking about. And knowing that they are doing the best that they can with what they have is important to acknowledge. Are they doing everything right? Hell no. But I really believe by having community as part of their tables and their discussions, we're gonna make a difference together. So being your own advocate from the patient perspective is so important. And I was gaslit by medical professionals. I went from being the respected nurse, the respected professional, to now being told I'm crazy and I'm in my 40s and it's just menopause.
That's okay.
But it wasn't, because my brain was not working correctly. And so they literally were like, oh, you can just go back to work taking care of kids and being responsible for their lives. I mean, dangerous as shit if you can't count to 10. Dangerous as hell if you can't remember how to walk from point A to point B in the office and where things are stored. I mean, simple things like that we take for granted. So, from the patient perspective, we want to really empower our patients to talk to their dispensaries, to talk to their doctors. And unfortunately, New York State does not do a great job with the medical program of people really giving the hands-on 101 of cannabis. And that's a problem because so many people don't know. The senior citizen market, okay, we have the largest ever in history of the world of baby boomers and Gen X's. And this is a demographic that we can really treat. This is a demographic that can be introduced to cannabis in a way that can improve their quality of life. And we're not talking about that. We're not finding products that can be manufactured for them, whether it's in the adult use side or whether it's in the medical RO side. And so these are conversations that these decision leaders need to hear. These are conversations that, we don't want high THC. We want a balanced one-to-one formulation that has, CBG in it or CBN in it and different cannabinoids that can really have an impact on our health. And if the people making those decisions at the dispensary level or at the doctor level or the pharmacy level, they literally are doing us a misservice if they're not hearing from the patients and being able to communicate back about what's working and why. And being a patient, I have learned all this all on my own. There's no manual, the 101, how to do the pot. It's just not out there. I've looked hard. But never being exposed to the guy, your man, the grower, I didn't know what to do. When COVID hit, I was a medical cannabis refugee in Canada. I learned all about cannabis in Canada. I learned about it, I lived it. I had a storage unit in Canada that holds all my cannabis. So I literally was a medical cannabis refugee. And I learned so much about the plant there. We had access to COAs. What are COAs? Certificates of analysis or test data. That is not readily provided in our medical program. I have been complaining about this and whining about this since I learned how to use cannabis based on terpene profiles, based on minor cannabinoid profiles. In the back of the room, you'll see there's a scanner thing that you can, if you want to follow me on socials, but next to that is the terpenes and minor cannabinoid chart. And that literally will give you a boiling point, what it's good for medically, and the different health benefits of each of the terpenes. I have pocket guides on me. If anyone wants one, please feel free to stop and grab one. But I really feel that dispensaries are not talking about terpenes. Dispensaries are not, they're literally, I can walk in any day at any of the 3 dispensaries in Buffalo, where I'm from, and say, hey, I'm looking for something really high in limonene and pinene. And the dude at the counter's like, huh? And I'm like, how is this not part of your training? How is this just accepted as okay when the benefits of the medicine are really found in the terpenes and in the entourage effect of the whole plant? It's not just about an isolated compound, it's about the whole plant. And the OCM is doing what they're doing based on their limited knowledge. If we don't infiltrate as a community, as a card license, as an RO, have a real advisory board. Let's stop with the token political bullshit. Let's literally get an advisory board that can help advise and make change and do the right thing. I feel like we are not doing the right thing by leaving patients, legacy growers, and operators completely out of the discussions. Most of the people at OCM have not been in a dispensary. They don't even know what a medical dispensary is all about. And I'm not saying this to judge, but I'm saying, how can you be writing laws and rules if you don't know what the people want? If you don't have an idea of what this preposterous security requirement, sorry Mario, but this preposterous security plan that you have to come up with and everything, how can you design that if you haven't seen the environment of what a medical dispensary is and how it goes down. So these are all things that I feel are really important to bring to the table. For cannabis industry professionals, one of the things I say to them, how do you feel about patients? Like, I feel like we're your best consumer. We're your best ROI. Why? Because we're there all the time. We have the budget set aside. We are using cannabis not to get high, but to get well. So how can I communicate that with the industry leaders and show them that we're really smart? Like, we've really experienced this, and I can have input on formulating things. I can have input on packaging. You guys clearly did not talk to patients when you came up with those packaging regs, okay? Size 8 font, I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't know who can read 8 size font, but not this girl. Opening packaging that, yes, the state has mandated packaging, but they've also approved packaging that is not, it may be more cost increased, but patients can't open it. Like, if I had $1 for every time I have to get out tools to try and open my medical cannabis, I mean, like, major squishing pliers, cutting apparatuses, knives,
Chainsaw.
3 people, it's literally a nightmare just to open packaging. So whoever is making those packaging regs and who's ever suggesting that size 8 font is good enough, that's a problem. I mean, especially if we're trying to cater to a market that's underserved. And my goal is to bring the Canna Curious to the table, to bring industry leaders together so that we can all talk about what's really going on. I believe we call that a roundtable discussion, but I don't feel like I've ever been invited to any roundtables. And that has to change, in my opinion. How do we communicate to a brand what we want? How do we communicate to the dispensary? How does the dispensary cater to the needs of that patient or client? We have to listen to them. Guess what? Just use them ears. You don't gotta talk, you just have to listen. And when you listen to that, you're actually gonna get insight in a way that you probably have never thought of before. And you know, the amount of products that are there are really overwhelming. So I try and really break it down, and on my website I have some graphic sheets that literally you can connect the dots, meaning when you're trying to vet a dispensary and build that brand loyalty, what kind of questions do you ask? You basically ask about, you know, hey, I want to come to you, do you have experience with such and such a condition, with these symptoms, and are these products available? Do you have time to walk me through the options that are available for this condition? Do you have resources in print form? Because I'm 75 years old and I don't use the internet. Like, I don't have QR code scan. I don't know how to use it because I'm a flip phone user. We have to meet the community where they are, friends. And this paper, old people love it. Anybody who's over 50 loves it because we can blow it up, we can read it, we can actually see it. On the computer, on the phone screen, people with disabilities, people with different abilities, even regular aged people, they need that extra help. So instead of trying to conform and make everybody use QR codes and use different mechanisms, how about we meet them where they are? Give them a sheet of paper that they can fill out and feel comfortable and ask those questions at the dispensary. Then when you're literally looking at purchasing from that dispensary, now you've vetted them and you feel comfortable, did that work? Yeah, you can tell I'm really good at this, guys. But basically, the situation is if we have handouts that we can give to the patients to be able to do the Cannabis 101 talk, that at the end of the day is what we're trying to do. And this will give brand loyalty, this will help teach them what questions to ask and how to do cannabis in a way that's meaningful. And, oh, you're gonna help me? Thanks. Clearly, I'm not the slide girl. See? She said disease.
Oh, you're good.
There you go.
Thumbs up. Yeah, you're
Yeah, boom, slide. So
Yeah.
if anyone is interested, thank you, Eric. If anyone is interested in these graphics to try and do Cannabis 101 and, you know, the Canna Curious, we need to get out into the community and get those people interested in cannabis because it can have so many profound, improve their quality of life aspects. And so if you're interested, please download on my website the information. And for industry leaders, do you guys see it important to care about the patient perspective? Do you see it's important to keep medical patients in the medical program? Recreational users, they're gonna come and go. You know, they're looking to get high on Friday night, but a patient is pretty much your patient for life, and unless you screw it up. Because we want easy, we want repeatability and the ability to just get our medicine and feel better. And if you do value us, let us know. Let us be part of the education of your community. Let us be part of advocating for those that don't have a voice or those whose voice has been damaged because of their condition. So I like to think of myself as the voice for the voiceless. I like to think of myself as someone who's been there, done that, and undergone an incredible amount of crap in my life, but has overcome it because of this plan. And together, we're so much stronger. And I just implore everyone to please talk to different groups of the community. Please advocate for other patients. Bring patients together. This shadow banning on social media, where that means you literally can't find support groups or anything like that because they're related to cannabis unless you have the exact name of that group. It's a real problem. Like, we used to have a resource. We could say, oh, Google, you know, Facebook group about brain injury or Parkinson's disease. That is not available to us anymore. And so how do patients connect with each other? How do we get that support? And I believe that can be done at the medical dispensaries and at the adult use dispensaries. I believe by having education, we can empower other people to come out of the cannabis closet, but teach them how to use cannabis. An immersion experience where they learn what a bong is, they learn what a pipe is, they learn what a vaporizer is. They can see what a dab is. Never forget the story. In Ohio, Grandma Jones went to the dispensary, got her card. She went, bought some sugar, and put that shit in her coffee. That was a very expensive $90 coffee. So I'm saying people don't know what they don't know. And so I really feel we need to bring the education down several notches when we're in the community. Like, this speech would not go for a community speech. We'd be talking about terpenes, I'd show them a plant, it would be a totally different level of education. So it's important that we meet the community where it's at and make a change to impact the future community and decisions going forward. So that is the new message that we have shared, that I invite questions and would love any feedback, etc.
I got a quick question. When you were in Canada, were you getting that education that you're not seeing here in the United States?
100%. And every licensed producer always gave cut sheets, if you will, of their product information, of how to use their product, of how to actually learn about the product they were selling. You go to a dispensary now, whether it's a medical or an adult use, there's limits on their advertising. There's limits on what they can say. So I have not, in New York State, seen very much information. Etain did have like a patient welcome guide that did say, you can do this, and the other thing, but it was very limited information. I talk about journaling your experience because there are so many different products on the market, and at the end of the day, a strain name is just that, a name. Without having a certificate of analysis or test report, it's very difficult to predict the effects you're going to have, because that test report, you can have one plant take samples from 4 different parts of the plant and they all have different terpene profiles. That's so important to communicate. One of the multi-state operators, I I like Green Thumb Industries. I like their dog walkers brand. I go to Washington State and get GTI. It's different than when I go to Nevada. It's different when it's in Massachusetts. So people are under the impression that just because it's a brand, it's going to be the same effect or result, and that's not really true. Again, you can get a guide, but it's not a sure thing. So it's really important. So I shop by COA. I literally say, I'm looking for something for my brain injury symptoms that's going to help my chronic pain of my head and neck. Do you have any recommendations? I usually favor strains high in beta-carotene and myrcene. And if they can't answer that most basic question, I'm probably in the wrong place. So Nevada has the best labeling on the planet. They actually list the top 3 terpenes with percentages as well as the minor cannabinoids. This right here is something that should not be optional. It should be in Canada, they don't enforce it. In California, they don't even have that option. Some brands have chosen to do that, but it's not required. To me, that's like fundamental. Like, you know, heavy metals testing. There's a lot of bad cannabis on the market, and people aren't talking about that, and we need to become educated. Question?
Good morning, Nikki. How you doing?
Good.
My name is Linda. I'm in the process of being the advocate for the capital region. One of my statements is, you stated that OCM is not educated on the cannabis industry and patients and what patients want. You are absolutely true, because if anybody was around during the promo era, when he kept denying and kept pushing and stopping the bills going through, he also stopped education in the community. And when it finally did come to flourish of the OCM, they started just picking people, like, hey, you have experience doing this, hey, you have experience doing this, you have years doing this. And yeah, everybody has years of business and advertising and whatnot, but that's not what we need. We needed people that actually used cannabis, that had a problem, mental, physical, whatever the case may be, okay, and understood what cannabis was and how to use it. However, we have people sitting at the top, like you said, that just ordinary people that have no sense of nothing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against OCS, but I've never seen no one from the advisory board, nobody from OCM literally come into the communities themselves and talk to the people. Come into the communities in which they're supposed to represent.
Well, that's not true. Deshita Dawson from the OCM, she's deep in the community. She's always out there
Right,
on the
but
front line.
that's one of many. That's what I'm saying.
What has she done?
All of them.
What has she done?
Yeah, I'm very curious.
I'm not gonna steal the stage. I'm just saying that, like, if you ask anybody, Deshita Dawson, she's constantly out there talking, advocating. Recently, there was a Manhattan Chamber of Commerce meeting that she was going to be on, and then there was CEO of Union Square Travel Agency, and like there was 2 people from the OCM and one of the dispensary owners. Like, you can have this conversation with me, and I'm not going to sit there and be their attorney, but I can assure you, just Google her and you'll see all the events that she's been to. So I'm not going to sit here and take up for the OCM, but I am going to take up for Deshita because I see her on the front lines. I'm not going to sit back and not say anything.
But she's one of many.
And Deshita,
She's the face of the OCM.
does
She's
not
the
work
face
for
of
the
the
OCM.
And she's doing that. Believe me, I got a million gripes with the OCM, but not with her because she's doing that part. And she is very educated because I booked her to speak at conventions before. She knows what she's talking about. I got no problem with you. I'm just taking up for this one woman who deserves a little voice in this conversation. That's all.
There's many members on the
Yeah.
team.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I'm just taking up for that person. Yeah. But if we all sat here and just said they don't do anything in the community, that's just not true. I just want to say that. Yeah.
But I think like what you're saying is they're not reaching out to the everyday humans that are using the product. And Deshita does not work for OCM. She actually runs a whole agency in New York City that is for funding, and it's like an incubator program that she started that the mayor of New York City.
Oh, well, thank you for letting me know.
So I mean, but
So maybe
you're
I'm
in the
wrong.
right, you're in the right frame.
Okay.
It's just from an OCM perspective, I think that's what.
Why do I feel like she's always representing the OCM when she's doing these things?
She's not.
Not the case?
She's
Oh,
not.
okay.
She's
I
representing
stand
funding,
corrected
she's
then.
representing community, she's representing, you know, building something bigger, but
Okay.
she's strictly focused on New York City.
Got
And, you know, she's an awesome human and she's done a lot in other states. And her hands are tied to a point
Oh, yeah.
where she can only do so much
She's not in it.
in the city because of regulations made by OCM and the CCB and the advisory board that apparently doesn't have any say. So, yes, there are people making a voice and doing a good job, but unfortunately, it's really not at the people level, like the regular humans that are using the product.
One other thing.
Okay,
too.
sorry,
I
then I'll come to you.
have learned that when I buy, whether it's tinctures or any type of CBD or THC, I bring my camera with me. And the reason why is, if you notice, there's a QR code, supposed to be a QR code on every product. So when you came back and you said everything has to have a certificate, I go click first before I buy it. And I look and see at whether or not you have an up-to-date certification. And I want to see the drugs. I want to see whether or not you've been clear. And if you're good when you're clear, and I'm going to ask you, one, where did you get this stuff from? One, how long has it been on the market? Because too much drug on the market, too much drugs sitting on your shelf, after a period of time, everybody knows it's not good. So as a person and as a user and as an advocate, you have to challenge the dispensary and what you're getting. Don't be afraid to take out your phone and go click on that QR code to find that certification, because everything now must be certified.
Yes, in the medical market or the adult use. Yes,
I'm Ken Weinberg. I'm actually a medical doc, cannabis doc, since the program started. And Kim and I were just talking about my frustration, and that's why I was talking about, I don't think the OCM has done anything in terms of education. It's very frustrating for me. Once murder passed, all of my colleagues have just, the medical market has just dropped out totally. And, you know, I mentioned to Kim that Florida and New York are basically the same population. There are like, what, 850,000?
850,000 medical patients in Florida compared to 120,000 in New York. And that's another reason why our ROs aren't making any money. Okay, so everybody wants to hate the registered organizations, but at the end of the day, they cannot sustain 38 dispensaries with 120,000 patients,
That's right.
where half of those patients probably just are using the card to potentially be a get out of jail free.
Why aren't there more registered patients?
Because
that's
nobody's marketing it. Because
Okay.
nobody is promoting it. We're all so wrapped up in the adult use market right now and trying to get that established and started that.
Is it really hard to register? Is it costly?
Not at all. It's $150.
Okay.
A doctor can do it, Presto Doctor, LeafWell. There's lots
No
of
medicine.
organizations that will certify you right away. And at the end of the day, the more patients we have, the better it is. The OCM has improved the program from when you first started to where it is now. Now we have whole flower. Cuomo was avidly against flower, you know. But they also have different forms of consumption. And again, these are all different per RO.
Can I just say something? LeafWell has been stealing patients, though. So please don't talk about LeafWell. The ROs have been giving the patient lists to LeafWell. And LeafWell will say, oh, you need to recertify? We'll do it for $99. I charge more than that. So
Hmm.
You think it's not appropriate for people to offer a more affordable cost to the patient? And the ROs
I
don't
can't
give
totally
processes
be
of-
against that, but I know what happens is they spend 5 minutes. And that's what's
They do.
happened, like with,
Many
what's that-
times.
That other company, what is it?
Presto.
Presto
No,
Doc,
no,
NuggMD.
They'll spend 15 minutes. Cannabis, as everybody here knows, is a really complicated plant. I spend an hour with a patient.
And you're the minority. You are the minority of physicians that does that. I've heard one other person, but you're doing it right, you know, and you're educating the consumer. where this is not the standard operating procedure. So what you're doing is actually very refreshing to hear, because we don't hear that in most cases.
I would argue that maybe what we're doing isn't working. Right? So we may need to accept outside intervention to help further my I imagine it's in the group. So I'd love to talk to you.
Okay.
Ooh.
Wow.
Nikki, I just want to say, I think there's just two main fundamental issues here. The first one is when patients go to a medical cannabis dispensary and they buy for the first time, they say to themselves, oh my God, my pills that I got on a copay for just $20, got me more relief than this did. Number one, that's the first one. And then the number two, if you look at the history of medical cannabis programs that have been successful across the country, there was always patient advocacy groups that were out on the front lines bringing patients in and helping them get medical cards. New York never had that.
Right.
But
And
that's
there's
what's
laws
that's been
prohibiting that because of
right.
the pharmaceutical model that kind of has played a role in that. And education is the most underutilized, underserved area in cannabis as medicine. It is literally so hard to get a doctor. I was called a drug seeker. It's in my file that I'm a drug seeker because I chose cannabis instead of opiates. I'm a medical professional. I'm a nurse. They were my colleagues. They were not, I never would have been called a hypochondriac as a nurse. Yet when I became a patient, everything changed. And the hell of flipping sides from healthcare provider to patient is absolutely hell. And that's one of the reasons I am so passionate about people becoming their own advocate. Learn as much as you can about your condition, because that doctor is under mandates by insurance companies, under mandates by his office manager that he's only got 15 minutes. And we need to see 60 patients a day. And if you don't, we're not gonna survive, because Medicare's cutting this, Medicaid's cutting that. And at the end of the day, we have to be better. We have to treat people as people and do what we can to help them and their health.
Can I just say one other thing? 11% of U.S. medical schools teach about the endocannabinoid system.
11?
11, it's up to 11?
10, 11, whatever.
No, I'm impressed.
I thought it was one.
I know, same.
How much time is spent teaching that curriculum in those programs, though?
That's a great question.
3 hours maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a major issue.
It is, huge.
Education is really critical to this.
But
And
no one wants to pay educators. No one wants to give, just being a speaker, just being an educator at community events, things like that. No one wants to pay because it's online. The information's out there. But what information are you really getting? Is Facebook really your only news source? You've got to be able to look further and find answers.
Well, it's the same thing with labor hours, right? Why aren't bud tenders trained in all of these things? So when you come in and say, I want mercy, they know exactly what to do. It's labor hours. It takes a lot of labor hours to train those folks.
It does.
And if the frameworks are so effed up that these companies are losing all this money because they can't comply with absurd packaging regulations.
right.
There's a bunch
Okay.
of us in this room that could do that job, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
So
Hire us.
yes.
We're all
Okay.
here.
I mean,
Here we are.
when I had Harborside and it was a medical framework, we spent
We put the hours in.
hundreds of thousands of dollars a quarter training folks to be able to do that. Because in those days, the doctors had nothing. Okay, there was nothing in the medical schools. There was nothing. Okay, and no one could get information. And we had to do that because we were a medical facility. We're proud to be a medical facility. We're in the fight with the patients. Okay, so. But then when the investors came along and we went to an adult use framework in California, the taxes went up, the costs went up, the companies couldn't raise enough money to cover all that. Guess what happened? My investors looked at our P&L and they said, what are you doing with these labor hours? You're killing my money I gave you. Cut, 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 gone. And so this is the fundamental solution. It's a crisis, but it's also an opportunity.
Right.
It is.
Okay? Because the knowledge is here, The educators are here. The money, if the companies can't do it or won't do it, and the OCM can't do it or won't do it, somehow bonding together to creating organizations like you have with yours and you may have with yours, somehow that's offering that solution to industry and somehow saying, look, we can give it to you for 20% of the cost if you did it yourself. Here it is. Hire us to come in and do this. Maybe that'll work. I'm not saying it will because it's still money, but it might be, it's a solution we might have more control over. I know you're already doing that. All right, you got your NikkiandthePlant.org right there. It's right there. I'm sure yours is too. So it's all right here. So it's just
Connecting the dots.
It's just
It's
connecting the dots
the
and
damn dots.
somehow gathering enough resources because you're here on your own dime. A lot of us are here on our own dime. We're advocates. No one's budgeting us. I can't go to all of them, So that's where it's helpful to have groups, I remember ASA. ASA was
ASA, I'm actively involved in. I'm the chair of
Harborside
New York
gave a
State.
lot of money to ASA back in the day, right?
They don't get any of that money anymore, Andrew.
I know.
ASA is impossible to fund. As a passionate advocate for safe access, I have done everything I can to try and get them funding and get them
Very
exposure.
hard.
And I can't get anybody to donate to the one patient-centered organization that cares about safe access, that does the research and actually puts out reports that show the state of the states, who has medical patients, how that state fares in social equity, in access, in education. They have a full rubric of how each state is judged. New York State got a D+ in 2021. Maine got a B. So anybody that goes to Maine will tell you their medical cannabis program is phenomenal. It's easy access, it's affordable, it's small farm based, and people love it. I wanted to go to Maine. I was actually asked to speak there by Nikki. And I just couldn't swing it because it was too expensive. The rooms were just ridiculous amounts of money because it was season.
Yeah.
But I wanted to check out Maine for the cannabis. I really did. It's like one of the few states I have not consumed it. So,
I got some Maine.
there's probably like 3. But there's so much opportunity, but we do have to talk to each other. And I think that's what the whole point of my presentation is to get the patient voice heard, but it's also to build community with the physicians, with the decision makers at the OCM. I'm not here to tell them everything they're doing wrong. They got a pretty good idea of that. Let's come up with solutions instead of just bitching about them.
Nikki, I missed beginning of your presentation, so this is kind of like a 2-part question. You probably already answered this one, I apologize. But on the dispensary and patient side, my journey with cannabis came in on my entail, my spiral in midst of depression, at the end. And I'm looking at all my pharmaceutical drugs that are not helping. So when I finally get to pain management, my doctor's like, okay, she wants to, I think, opiates. Something. I was like, and that answer is no. And she goes, okay, so what are you thinking? I was like,
You're the
you
doctor.
just say my piss came back dirty? Like, what do you think? Well, I'm here for it. So, I sat down with the doctor and I'm expecting a thorough consultation. You understand? Like, what are you here for? What do you need? What's going on? What's bothering you? And then I get to the dispensary and it was nothing.
Total disconnect.
And it was during COVID, so I didn't know, it was different from Jersey because my sister-in-law, her regimen was different, so I was excited. So I get there and they just say we have a sativa indica hybrid, that was it. I didn't get a name, I didn't get no background on it. I didn't even get flour. And finally, when it was time, when my license didn't come in and it was time for me to go into the dispensary, they had brown flour at that time. But I needed the volcano in order to use it, so it has some. I said, so make it make sense to me. I could pick up my prescription for $6.27 but I
Right.
have to get this capsule for $20 per capsule.
$500
Make it make
off
sense
Kano.
to me, you know, and then I don't have any information on how it's going to help me. I got my depression, I got pain, I have this, I have that. You know, no one spoke to me, so when I deep dove into the plant, each strain, and started documenting my own journey,
That's important.
I had to have a different conversation with my doctors. Each new doctor that came into my team, I would welcome them and let them know we are not here to prescribe me anything. We're here to find out what the issue is. I'll take care of it from here. If my orthopedic, he goes, Gary, if I have more patients like you, I'll be out of business. I said, no, we need you, but I need you to connect the dots.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah.
It's sad because as much as I see, they say, you know, get your cannabis card. Okay, but when we do, no one's educated.
No one's educated.
No one's educated.
No one is.
I would sit down, the pharmacist, not so much today, but the pharmacist, I need a consult at Rite Aid, the pharmacist will give me that. But I can't get that at the dispensary.
For those of you that didn't get to see it, Sanjay Gupta did a great episode on seniors on CNN about 3 weeks ago, and it was so informative of how they're approaching medical patients and taking them on a bus to the dispensary, to the grow, so that they understand what cannabis is from the ground up. They get to expose to terpenes and different products in a way that they can understand it. And for me, I mean, I'm very hands-on learning. Like, I don't read because of my brain injury anymore, but it's really hard for some people to do that. So if they can see it in action and how to do this thing, it makes all the difference.
Now, second part of my question, I might have missed it. I know a lot about your journey. I met my first unicorn after you that her body doesn't respond to cannabis for animals.
Right.
How can she wants to coming up, she doesn't want to smoke as much. How do you medicate?
So, very few products that go through first pass digestion work for me. I lack a gallbladder and I had weight loss surgery. Those are two things that have direct impact on how your body metabolizes fat-soluble things. So, as a result, I have learned that I can eat 2,000 milligrams of any kind of cannabis and feel nothing. And I'm not even sort of exaggerating. Like, these are tested products, and I feel nothing, other than maybe a little sick from this too much sugar. Like, Boulder bars are 500 milligrams each. I can knock 2 of those down, and it was more just an experiment. Like, I mean, can I really eat 1,000 milligrams? And I did. And if anything, the sugar just got a little loopy for me. But nanotechnology has been something that has been very helpful for me. Rapid buccal strips have been very effective for me. Can't get those in New York, which is a problem for me. And one of the other things is, like, Curaleaf, one of the ROs, has nanobites. And nanobites are great. They're only 5 milligrams, but I need like 30 of them.
Exactly.
So that's not cost effective. So for me, the old vape pen and the old flower is what really works. But I mean, this is better than nothing. Etane really makes a great cartridge. And I mean, these are things I've learned because I've visited so many dispensaries. You don't know that coming out of the box. So it's so important that we can find a way to educate and build that bridge. I think we're almost done. I thought you had a question. Okay. All right. Well, friends, thank you very much. I hope you learned something. And I'll be here for the next 2 days. So if you want to catch up, let me know. Thank you.